Okay, so let's do these algebra examples that are in the lecture. So let's start out with this algebra problem here. 4x squared minus 9 equals 7. And we want to solve for x here. So remember our law of algebra. We can do anything we want to an equation just as long as we do it to both sides of the equation. So what we want to do in an equation with something like this is we want to get x by itself. Okay? We want to solve for x. We want to, in a sense, isolate x. So what we're going to do first here to do that is we're going to add 9 to both sides. So let's go ahead and add 9 to both sides of this equation here. So we're adding 9 to both sides. So 9 minus 9 is 0. We're left with 4x squared. 7 plus 9 is 16. So we're left with 4x squared equals 16. So we're on our way here. Let's go ahead now and divide both sides by 4. So we're going to divide both sides of this equation by 4. 4x squared divided by 4 gives you x squared. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Okay, now we're left with x squared equals 4. Let's go ahead now and take the square root of the whole thing. So we take the square root of the whole thing, we apply the square root to both sides of this equation then. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of 4, well, one solution is 2, but there are two solutions. Minus 2 squared, the square root of 4 is also minus 2, because minus 2 times minus 2 gives you 4. So the answer to this problem here is plus or minus 2. Okay, so one solution is positive 2, one solution is minus 2. Okay, and we can plug that into our original equation up here, and we'll see that that works out. So we plug in 2 here, or minus 2. Either one gives you 4. When we square it, 2 squared is 4, times 4 is 16. Minus 9 gives you 7. So both of those work out. Okay, so let's move on to the next algebra problem here. And this is a similar type of question, except we have what's called a quadratic equation. So here's our quadratic equation. It's x squared minus 3x minus 10 equals 0. Okay, so remember the quadratic formula which we just presented in lecture there. It's a very simple formula that allows us to solve a quadratic equation like this. A quadratic equation is one that has a term of x squared in it. Okay? So the quadratic formula tells us that x is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay? So in this equation up here, a is 1. So let's write that somewhere here. So a is the term here, so that gives us a equals 1. B is this factor here. B is minus 3. And c is this factor here. So c is minus 10. So let's plug that stuff into our quadratic formula here and solve for x. Okay, so we'll do that here. X is negative b. So b is negative 3, so that gives us a plus 3. Plus or minus the square root of all this stuff here, which is b squared minus 4ac. b is minus 3, so minus 3 squared is 9. So we get a 9 there. We have the little minus here, so minus 4 times a times c. So 4 times a is 4 times 1, 4ac, so 4 times 1 times minus 10. 4 times 1 times minus 10 is minus 40, so we get a minus 40 in here. And whenever we have a minus of a negative thing, that basically just becomes a plus. Okay? All of that divided by our 2a. So 2a is 2. Okay, so looking at our stuff in here, we have a 9 and a 40. 9 plus 40 is 49. Okay? And if you just put on your calculator, 49, take the square root of that, it's 7. Okay? So we're left now with x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 49, which is 7, divided by 2. Okay, so we have two solutions then, one corresponding to the plus, one corresponding to the minus sign. So our first solution then, if we use the plus sign, 3 plus 7 is 10, divided by 2 gives one solution of 5. Okay? Now our second solution comes from the minus sign. 3 minus 7 is minus 4, divided by 2 is minus 2. So there's our two solutions for x then, 5 and minus 2. And you can plug those back into this equation here, and you'll see that they'll work out. So if we have 5 squared is 25, minus 3 times 5, 15. So 25 minus 15 is 10. Minus 10 is 0. So that works out. And minus 2 squared is 4. Minus 3 times minus 2. So 3 times minus 2 is minus 6. So we have 4 minus 6. That gives you 10. Minus 10 is 0. So that works out as well. So a quadratic equation like this will always have two solutions. Okay?